I hope you're ready to get your little gray cells aroused and in order. For it is time to solve a murder. Let's see. Dust we be with the having of any new information? Oh, Colonel Major. My mistake. He was a jerk. He kind of deserved it. Let's be honest. But justice is justice. Let us speak to the butler, Archibald.
Good morning, Detective. You slept well?
Oh yes, I very much slept well.
I'm afraid I did not.
Oh.
I was hoping for at least a moment of pleasant slumber, but alas, it was not to be. Finding the Major's killer is the only thing that will put my mind at ease.
In that case, Detective, what can I do to help?
While watching the snow fall last night, I swear I saw the silhouette of a figure standing in the garden.
If someone was out there, we'd have another body on our hands.
Yes, go investigate.
I realize how strange it sounds. I would not believe it myself if I had not seen it with my own eyes.
Staff have reported seeing things in the dark before, but it always just turns out to be shadows. It was likely just your mind playing tricks.
Being a masterpiece mystery from a novelist, it is obviously not the case.
I'm afraid our Lizzie is not well. I think the events of yesterday were too much for her. We'll have to just make do without her this morning.
As Wordsworth once stated, rest and be thankful. Perhaps
Normally I would be reading the lines, but
wonders.
it's early in this new chapter, so they're actually having voiceovers. I'd like to also speak with Madame Van de Bosch at her earliest convenience. Why on earth would you want to do that?
She is currently eating breakfast alone in the dining room. It's how she prefers it. But if you wish to speak with her now...
Even the butler doesn't want us to do it. It is important to speak with her, but perhaps it is better to allow her to finish. I do not wish to upset her before I have even asked her my first question. I could perhaps investigate the garden for any evidence of the figure from last night.
I would, but I'm afraid I found this morning that the telephone lines aren't working. The snow continued through the night and must have damaged them.
Sure, blame the snow, when they could easily have just been cut.
Even if we could use the telephone, I don't think anyone would be able to reach us.
In that case, it will be up to myself alone to solve the case.
I'll let you know if anything changes. But until some of the snow clears, enough for the carriages to arrive, we are snowed in.
Cars were still a very new concept. Although I am not able to call upon and leave the house to find help from the local authorities, it also means none of the guests are able to leave. I have until the snow clears to find not only Mademoiselle Angelina's blackmailer, but also the Major's killer.
Taken care of. Master Demir and his brother, after sobering up, helped me move him into the cellar. Best place for the time being.
Très bien. I imagine there is no reason for anyone to go down there.
Besides me, no one. Once this snow clears, we will be able to move him from the house.
Your assistance has been most valuable as always.
Well, that more or less catches everyone up with everything. Let us speak with Mademoiselle Angeline.
Good morning, Detective. I hope you were comfortable last night.
Comfortable.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. The room was more than pleasant, merci. I'm afraid my mind was not in a state to enjoy it to its full potential, though.
I can't imagine any of us slept soundly last night.
I did.
Hopefully guilt will be weighing heavily on someone's shoulders this morning.
Oh. Perhaps on more than one set. Yes, because the most recent deduction has told us there is not one murderer / blackmailer, but actually potentially two or more that are working together.
I'm sorry if I was not much help last night, Detective.
On the contrary, your inside knowledge of the guests was of great help to my investigation. But there are many more questions that require answers.
What were your feelings towards the Major's position in the house?
His position? You mean about him living here?
Oui, even in a house this size, you must see a lot of each other.
I enjoyed having him here. When I was away with Gideon, it was comforting to know Maman was not alone. Although his work with Mr. Da Silva has kept him away from the house of late.
What can you tell me about their relationship, working or otherwise?
There is not much to tell, only that there is no love lost between them.
Do you know what their business entailed?
He was always quite private about his work. I know that he was helping Mr. Da Silva with some safety matters.
I
we had
found
already
a check
discovered.
addressed to the Major from Monsieur Da Silva. It noted security consulting.
Ah, that's right, security. With his military training, he helped Mr. Da Silva prepare for any trouble with the strikes.
Although the Major's death has taken precedence, there has been a development in the blackmail case.
A development? Oh, detective, I knew I could count on you.
Of course, one could always count on the great Hercule Poirot.
It may not be the news you had wished for, though. Another letter has been found.
Addressed to me? I don't know how much more I can take of this.
The art style for their portraits are very, very well done.
Pardonnez-moi, mademoiselle. Although it has been written in the same manner, using similar phraseology, it was not sent for your eyes, rather the Major's. Or at least that is how it seems.
I'm sorry, detective, I don't understand. It is addressed to him or not?
I found it in the Major's study yesterday while conducting my preliminary search. Whether he is the author of the letter or the recipient, I am still yet to discover.
Could the Major have been behind the blackmail?
Heavens no, he could not do that.
You did not hesitate for a moment.
Why would he do such a thing? And then to send a letter to himself? It just doesn't make sense.
Merci for your time, mademoiselle. You are to a detective what an umbrella is to a traveler on a wet day.
Useful?
Exactement.
And I have noticed that they are not the only two. Monsieur Gideon, oh, there's more than just them in here. They're all hiding back here in the sitting room.
Bonjour, Monsieur Demir.
Detective Poirot, how are you?
The truth, monsieur. With each step towards uncovering the blackmailer, I am thrown 2 steps back as to the identity of the Major's killer.
Is there something I can help you with?
After investigating the crime scene yesterday, I asked Monsieur Sterling to move the body.
Archibald came to me and asked for my help in the matter. My brother and I dealt with it.
Merci for your help. It is a job that only the professionals should have to undertake.
It's a job that had to be done, although it may have affected my brother more than I.
Now we have to
How so?
make sure to talk to his brother.
At the sight of the body, the color drained from his face. Once we had reached the cellar, Zachariah took himself straight off to bed, without even a good night.
While in the nature study, I noticed the Major's safe was locked. Would you know who has access?
Felix and Madame Vandenbosch are the only ones with keys, as far as I'm aware. Oh, and Archibald. I'm sure I heard Felix asking him to return something to it once.
I wonder why Mr. Sterling did not mention this previously.
I have not seen him since last night. I'm sure he will have been fine after a good night's sleep.
I imagine the alcohol would have acted as a sufficient sleeping aid.
He does not need his younger brother checking in on him.
Perhaps that is exactly what he requires.
I'm not sure what he told you yesterday, Detective, but he's a big boy. He can look after himself.
I worry that may not be the case, monsieur. His time in the war came up in conversation more than once during our conversations.
He's still talking about it? I thought talking to the doctor would have stopped all of that.
Say who what?
Merci, monsieur.
And then the Countess. Excuse me, the Comtesse.
I wonder if I could ask you some questions.
That is it, detective? No small talk? No inflating of one's ego?
I am afraid not, Countess. With the murderer still loose in the house, my mind is rather preoccupied.
Well then, detective, perhaps I can be of some assistance.
Comment, madame?
I thought you might like to know what I found on the Major's body.
Why would you know?
That certainly piqued your interest.
A man has been murdered, and you find it acceptable to fool around and joke.
Oh, please, detective. Do you really think so little of me? Archibald asked for my assistance. He knows of my medical training from my days as a nurse, and I thought I would be able to help. Even if it has been some years.
It was not his place to grant you access to the body.
I shall remember to keep my assistance to myself next time. A single stab wound, which you no doubt already knew. The knife was held in their right hand. I would say their predominant hand.
So that just eliminates 30% of the population. Suspect in a murder investigation has examined the very victim that they are suspected of killing. It is like something out of a crime novel.
Judging by the depth of the wound, I would say there was no great force put into the strike. More a sign of defense than attack.
Oh.
If I had to say what weapon was used, a small sharp knife or dagger.
This may confirm my suspicions of the Major's knife being used to kill him.
I understand it may be difficult for one to keep such information to yourself, but I ask you to try. Your involvement has already tainted my investigation.
You are welcome, detective.
And all goodwill we had with Comtesse is gone. When my superior officer hears of the goings-on in this house, I will surely be seeing the green fields of the countryside once more. I must do all I can to redeem the reputation I have worked to build, starting with finding the killer.
S'il vous plaît, Comtesse. Keep this information to yourself.
That's everyone here. I believe we have already gotten some connections. 2 for the killer, none for the murder. Oh, the Major's involvement with the blackmail has 2 connections to find now. Let's see. Well, it's probably that.
Another success.
Haha.
I never doubted myself.
One can't be surprised with Angeline and Felix's bond. He's been a figure in her life for so long.
Things are beginning to
Aha.
become clearer.
I have heard of men returning physically from war, but their minds remain on the battlefield. Do I need to speak to Gideon, investigate the garden, and talk to Cassandra? I'm so excited to talk to Cassandra.
If it will help you find the Major's killer, of course. When he returned from the war, he was a different man. Everything became about what he had seen.
I cannot speak from experience, but I can only imagine the horrors
PTSD.
he must have witnessed.
They called it shell shock after World War One.
The first weeks he would wake in the night, screaming. I found him one night, cowering behind the desk in the study. When I tried to help him out from beneath it, well, it was the first time I had ever feared for my life.
That is not why you two are no longer close?
And not at all, detective. We were always very different in nature. While I had always wanted to follow an academic path, Zachariah was more of a free spirit. Or at least as free as our father and the laws would allow.
Heh.
And yet he ended up in the military. Quite the contrast.
Our father demanded that he at least try to do something with his life. And when some of his friends joined the army, he signed up with them.
Terrible reason to join the military.
It wasn't long before he moved out from the family home after his return from the army. I always assumed that he had put the war and everything that came with it behind him and was moving on. But now I see that is far from the truth.
Oh, do we have another connection already? No, we just scratched talk to Gideon off the list. Let us inspect the garden. We cannot go to the salon, we can go to the dining room, but I have zero desire to talk to the Comtesse first. Let us investigate the snowy garden. Finding evidence from the figure last night will on one hand confirm I am not seeing things as Mr. Stilling suggested, but on the other pose even more questions that must be answered. An expensive lighter. A well-made lighter, with the insignia of a military regiment. The major must have dropped it. Let's see. Ah, a fallen bird feeder.
Oh,
It has almost disappeared in the snow. I doubt we will see too many birds in these conditions. That... Check the exterior first, and then we will circle around into the middle. Obviously, we have no hope to find footprints because snow.
huh.
Garden tools have been left out, presumably before the snow fell. Okay. Now we will spiral inward. Don't mind me as I take a few seconds to draw a pattern in the snow. Milk bottles. They must have been left out for collection. I cannot see anyone making it through the snow, though. Aha! Faint footprints. There's a small trail of footprints in the snow. The major was seen walking around here yesterday. There's more yet to inspect. There is more yet to inspect, I suspect, because it has not crossed that off. So we have the fallen bird feeder in here. That's it. Don't mind me legitimately using my mouse to just, oh. Yeah, the gate itself. Duh. Exit is impossible.
Huh.
The house is completely snowed in. It does not look like we'll be going anywhere anytime soon. The snow is still falling, and I'm hardly dressed for the occasion. Perhaps Madame Van de Bosch has finished her breakfast and is ready to answer my questions. Immediately returns you into the house. Nope, that's not what I want. Okay, I had to move. 0, 0, 0. So we acquired no good information from the guard yet. To the dining room. Are there more people to delay? While I must speak with Madame Van de Bosch, I should also take this opportunity to talk to Mademoiselle Rihanna in the kitchen. That is a typo. I found my first typo! Yay! It's not necessarily a good thing, but you know. It's a bust. Madame Van de Bosch's collection of art extends further than just paintings. Probably the same.
Aha.
Yep. A window, which is actually a door. I have to click all of them just to make sure. Just in case there's something different about any of them. Drinks low. I'm gonna go to the kitchen first. I do not want to talk to her yet. She is just too rude. Too rude, too snobbish, too I just don't want to. Pots and pans.
Huh.
It's obviously the door. Aha, cupboard. Okay. Now we will speak to Rihanna. One of the few people we have not
Bonjour,
yet had the
madame.
opportunity.
You must be the wonderful cook.
Wonderful and modest, sir. I am Rihanna.
My taste buds thank you for the ravishing meal last night. It has been some time since I ate so well.
Glad to hear it, sir.
S'il te plaît, madame. A detective is fine.
In that case, mademoiselle is fine for me, and I will ignore your presumption of marriage.
Hello, Zanmar.
Très bon, mademoiselle.
Well acquainted, meaning I have met every character. You have been with the Van de Bosch family for quite some time.
That's right. I've seen staff come and go, but a house always needs a trustworthy cook.
One that's even trusted with keys. Ooh.
I agree. But if I was to eat what you prepare every day, I fear I may be the size of La Maison.
The mansion.
Not a bad thing, detective. You could put some meat on your bones.
Oh, different times when people felt that being slightly bigger was healthier.
Well, with the snow still not clearing,
Slightly
I
bigger.
may be stuck here for the weekend. Perhaps I should look to adjust my pantalon buttons.
I understand you took some ice to the Major yesterday.
I did. Monsieur Archie told me what had happened. Bruises can swell fast, so I took him some ice to bring it down.
Strange. Monsieur Turling told me it was the Major that requested the ice.
How was the Major when you saw him?
Grumpy, as always.
I suppose one would not take kindly to being punched as he was.
Punched or not, he was as ungrateful as ever.
I shall not keep you any longer. Merci, mademoiselle.
Any new connections? No. Meaning I am now forced to talk to the least pleasant character in this mansion. The lady of the house. Madame Cassandra Van den Bosch.
Bonjour, madame. May I offer my condolences for your loss?
Thank you, Detective, but they are not necessary. What can I do for you?
I was hoping you would be prepared
Okay.
to answer some questions.
If I must.
Typical. Oof, either of these topics are going to be bombshells.
I'm sure you're aware he was not the easiest man to get along with. His hot temper made him a number of foes.
Including everyone in this house.
A hot temper is reason enough to kill a man.
His mouth often acted before his brain. Perhaps someone had grown tired of dealing with it. Seeing as I heard Mr. Becker's in what I would describe as an unnecessarily loud exchange of words yesterday, he would be my first suspect.
You heard them yourself.
How could I not? The volume they were shouting at, I could hear them from the study in my room.
You did not think it fitting to tell me this yesterday?
I didn't think Felix was going to wind up dead and a murderer loose in my house. My apologies, Detective.
Ah, nice. Nice, Senmar. Although I must learn more of this argument, it is not Madame that I expect the answers to come from, rather Monsieur Becker's. He has a great deal of explaining to do. Hopefully, Zanmar. Yep, and I got, on my end, I got a person that I'm probing questions for about getting him to make some custom overlays and emotes and things for me.
I assume you are talking about the supposed blackmail letter.
Oui, madame. You know of it?
It arrived shortly after the first. Rather coincidental, if you ask me.
I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to say, madame.
He no doubt had secrets hidden away. But do you honestly think Felix had anything of value to his name worth threatening him for?
That is a very valid point. The Major was not the wealthiest of men. I mean, he hooked up with the Van den Bosch family intentionally to more or less mooch off of them.
Perhaps you should enlighten me.
Well, he was here, living in my house, eating my food, prepared by my staff. Does that answer your question, Detective?
How do you think the Major came to have the letter?
I wouldn't put it past him to have written it himself, in the hopes of getting some sympathy from me.
Oof.
And the other letters?
He probably wrote those too. If Angeline paid the first, that would have given him the money to pay the second letter. He is the White Knight, saves the day, and expects to live here happily ever after.
I do not expect Madame Van den Bosch to be so blunt with her thoughts towards the Major, or helpful. I was under the impression there was more to their friendship, not less. It is quite the nefarious plan that Madame has laid out for the Major. I'm not sure I can believe he would go to such levels of deceit. I'm sure Mademoiselle Angeline will have an opinion on the matter.
What is
Like
it you wish to know?
You two have been friends for some time now. And while I do not mean to pry, has your relationship only...
If you are trying to insinuate that Mr. De Silva and I are running around like schoolchildren, you could not be further from the truth. He was friends with my husband, for goodness sake.
Oui, I understand they worked together. Investments, if I am correct.
Mr. De Silva was the voice of reason that my husband should have listened to more often, instead of throwing our money at businesses that were already on the verge of bankruptcy.
Oof.
Merci, madame. I shall not bother you any further.
I have gathered all I need from Madame Van den Bosch and Mademoiselle Vienna. I should return to the Great Hall. Fantastic. Do we have some connections now? Yes, we have one toward the Major's involvement with the blackmail. Let's see. Contradiction.
The pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together.
Angeline and Cassandra have different impressions of the Major. There must be a reason for this. And we must speak to Angeline.
Is there something I can help you with, Detective?
Your maman does not describe her friendship with the Major in such a
You
positive
have
light.
got the wrong end of the stick, Detective. Maman has snapped at him recently, but it was nothing more than that. It was something to do with the letter. I heard them in the library before Maman shouted and he stormed out of the room past me.
Could it have been the blackmail letter that instigated their argument?
Why would Maman be upset with him over the letter?
Madame is of a very different opinion from yourself regarding his connection with the letters. She believes him to be the author.
That is what she told you? She has always been one to make a quick, if not rash decision, but she
True.
cannot truly believe that.
Was the Major aware you had paid the first blackmail letter?
I don't recall telling him directly. I did not want Maman to find out it had been paid. If he knew, surely she would.
Madame believes he may have been behind all the letters, and taking your payment of the first, then used it to pay the second and be the hero in you and your mother's eyes.
I never knew Maman had such an imagination. Where would she get a story like that from?
Well, she is certainly well read.
That is a question I was hoping you may be able to answer.
You have met him. Do you really think he's capable of such a devious plan?
It is a plan only the most crooked and underhanded could create. Is that the Major? I am not so sure.
The more I think on Madame's story, the more ridiculous and obscure it sounds. But that does not mean it can be ruled out.
I shall not keep you any longer. Merci, mademoiselle.
There is another connection. Uh-huh.
Come, my little grey cells.
Nope. Let's see. It's nothing here because all the new information that was added is right here. So it's got to be one of these two.
Is there something?
Nope. But it could be.
I must take a different approach if I am to uncover the truth.
I don't see how that connects.
Some would say a lucky guess. I would say a moment of genius.
I wonder if the blackmail had a greater effect on their relationship than expected. Oh. That's an odd connection. So we're connecting the fact that Cassandra and the Major had a problem with their relationship because of the blackmail to what if Angeline and Gideon had an issue with their relationship. That, I don't know, that seems like a leap. So we shall speak to Gideon.
If it will help you.
Oh, we got nothing for you. I guess that's the problem. We can just get all our answers from Angeline. I guess.
Is there something? I'm afraid it had been that way for some time. Maman is not forthcoming with her emotions, as I'm sure you are aware, but I could tell she had not been happy with their arrangement for the last few months.
What gave you that impression?
There was not one particular thing that she expressed, it was just the way she spoke to him and of him when he wasn't present.
Oof.
I shall not keep you any longer. Merci, mademoiselle.
I believe I have gathered everything that is required. Mr. Sterling will be able to assist me in gaining access to the Mage's study. We should have one more new connection. Nope. Just conversation with Archibald. Monsieur Sterling.
Whatever you need, Detective. Certainly, Detective.
To the Mage's study once more. This room is still a crime scene, and should have remained untouched, but it looks as though it has been ransacked. I requested Mr. Sterling to have the body wrapped and moved, which has been done. Thankfully, what else has gone on here? Ah. Any changes? No changes. No changes across there. The safe has been opened.
Oh,
Someone has obviously been looking for something in particular in the Major's documents. These accounts have been thoroughly rifled through. The Major has recently taken out a large loan, and the interest rate is astronomical. He was going to pay the ransom himself, because he actually cared. The Major is not the blackmailer. Empty envelopes, addressed to the Major with no return address. I must admit, side by side, there is a striking resemblance between Med et Fille. Perhaps such flattery is the way to win over Madame Van de Bosch. Ah. Interesting. This picture has been torn, removing the father. The Viscount was also present in the picture, but has been folded, torn out. I did not think there was any hostility between the Major and the late Viscount. Strange. I could not access this yesterday, but now has been left wide open. Scratches are obvious around the lock. Someone in this house was eager to see the safe's contents. A half-sealed letter addressed to Madame Van de Bosch from the Major. I am not one to read out this private mail, but under the circumstances. My dearest Cassandra, it feels as though it has been an age since I have been able to set my eyes on you. A day I have waited for so impatiently. I keep the photograph of us together at the lake close to my heart, always. I cannot wait to see how young Angeline has grown. Her beauty will surely soon reach that of her mother's. Should be apostrophe there. I hope the gifts from the Orient reached you fine. They are really something to behold. The work that has kept me away for so long is drawing to a close, and I will be returning to the continent within the month. At your request, I have found accommodation in the city. It pains me to think of being so close and yet unable to be with you every moment. But if it eases your worry, I shall not continue to question it. I will arrange for a visit to the house. An old friend returning will surely raise minimal suspicions. I understand that the Viscount is also currently out of the country. I hope you have not felt the strain of loneliness take over, and it will not be long until we are reunited. Until that day, and till the end of mine, my heart is yours, Major Felix Hagen. It seems there is a great deal of Madame Van den Bosch and the Major's relationship that she has withheld. It is clear from this letter that their affection for one another has been more than that of friendship for some time. The mention of young Angeline suggests it may go back as far as 20 years. Is that every... But we have two connections. Let's see.
This will not get me any.
Nope. Ah.
I cannot see the logic in this. Magnifique.
Yep. That's what I had suspected. The Major paid the letter that was addressed to him. He must be worried enough that something would be released to the Republic. But what? The Major is Angeline's father. That is my suspicion. That.
Order and method. That.
Oh, come on. That totally has to be it. Maybe.
I must act on thought and fact.
Yep, I told you he'd been gripped out. Yep.
I cannot see the logic in. What a revelation!
Yeah, okay. The hidden photos, along with Angeline's attachment to Prue, proves that he cared deeply for them.
I must act on thought.
Oh, come on. Those are related.
This will not get me any close.
I'm not certain. Although what I have started to notice is that they are always not necessarily close, but straight line to each other.
Come, my little grey sap. I should not be
Okay.
surprised by my own skills.
Major would do everything to remain in the comfortable life he's accustomed to, but would he stoop so low as to fake the blackmail letter? Except he paid
The
his.
pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together.
The evidence shows the Major was not the author of the blackmail letter. The Major was a victim, just like Mademoiselle Angeline. Whoever is penning these letters knows a great deal about many people. He's gotten a lot of money. I wonder how many more have received similar letters. The Major is not the blackmailer. Mystery uncovered. The uncertain connection between the Major and the ransom has been resolved. The Major was being blackmailed. The letters were not written by his hand. What remains unresolved is why the Major was being blackmailed. 2 cases of extortion under one roof? the question of the relationship must be asked. The Major's secret is anything but obvious from his letter. And now, I now have a blackmailer and a murderer and their weapon to find. If the correct process is followed, they shall all be found swiftly. I should take my leave. This room has already revealed enough new insights into the Madame's and the Major's lives. Which means we probably need to
Detective
go
Poirot,
confront
I
Cassandra.
have been asked to inform you that Lady Vandenbosch has returned to her room, and she wishes not to be disturbed.
Of course.
Merci. Madame certainly has mastered the art of subtlety.
They may not be the exact words she used, but I'm sure you can imagine. Excuse me, I have some further duties to attend to in the pantry.
Perhaps I should take this opportunity to search the top floor, now that there is no one to disturb me. There is one room that holds particular interest. I should inspect the storage room while I have this rare opportunity. Ooh. So we are on the top floor now. The Major's bedroom, Cassandra's bedroom, which I can open. Oof. Angeline and Gideon's bedroom. Let's examine some paintings.
Oh,
Spectacular pieces.
hmm. Aha.
It's clicking on all the things to make sure that any possible clue has been found. See? Exquisite artwork. I just unlocked an achievement. Haha!
Hmm.
Telescope. Presumably facing out a window.
Oh.
The storeroom. Children's toys.
Huh.
Considering they have been kept in a storage room, they are in almost perfect condition. My immediate assumption would be they belong to Mademoiselle Angeline. A book.
Huh.
A lone storybook rests here. It has obviously been read a great number of times, judging by the condition of the spine and pages. I am perhaps not the target demographic, but I understand it to be quite popular amongst the younger audience. To the real lady of the house, happy birthday. Watching you grow into a proper young lady has been more than words can describe. All my love, Felix. I would not have expected to find such a heartfelt message written by Monsieur Hagen and to Mademoiselle Angeline. Is this the usual inscription you would find from a family friend? New mind map unlocked. I cannot seem to get a straight answer from anyone regarding the Major. I know he has been friends with Madame Vandenbosch for some years, but I must find out if it was anything more.
Order and method. Is there something I am not seeing? I must take a different approach if...
Right.
Magnifique.
It seems the Major has lived rather comfortably in the Vandenbosch house for many years. Speak to Angeline. Is there anything else in this room? Ah, another clock. Nope. Ambush. Yep, we're good. Is there... No, I didn't think so. I could, but I have zero desire to unleash that dragon just yet. Perhaps it is time to speak with Mademoiselle Angeline again. She should be able to give us the valuable pieces of this puzzle. And she's conveniently right there.
Detective Poirot, are you any closer to uncovering the truth of Felix's involvement with the letters?
I am, mademoiselle. I can confirm that he was not the author of the blackmail letters.
So the author is still out there.
Oui, but it will not be long before they are apprehended, and the only letters they shall be penning will be from behind iron bars.
Your confidence is rather assuring. Thank you, Detective. I'm sorry, Detective. I did not intend to leave your mind so full of thoughts.
No apology is required.
I
It
keep
actually
forgetting
made
that
me
when you
question
click on
my
it, he
whole
doesn't read
chain
that
of
line.
thinking. What if there had been a collusion between them, and the Major's murder was planned, organized, and orchestrated to make the investigation seem almost impossible?
Oh my, Detective, that is quite a theory.
Every guest has a motive. You confirm that with the mention of Mademoiselle Conrad and the Major's fight. Supplying one another with a rock-solid alibi would surely throw off any detective.
But not you.
Correct, mademoiselle. It would take much more to stamp Detective Poirot.
While searching the storage room, I found a book that I assume was a gift from the Major to you.
I haven't seen that book in so long. Yes, it was a gift for my 10th birthday. I have read it from cover to cover countless times. He left such a lovely inscription too.
It sounds as though there is a side to the Major I did not get to see. Was it common for him to bring you gifts?
Not common, but if he had been away for some time, he would bring me a small memento from his travels. He hasn't done that in some time, though.
The toys that were with the book, were they also gifts from the Major?
They were. I'm afraid they may have gathered some dust being in the storage room for so long. I kept them in hope of giving them to my child when the time comes.
Ah,
It sounds as though he had
Precious.
always cared about you.
His presence at the house was comforting for us both after Father died, even if sometimes he was a little too overprotective.
you spoke last night of the Major's support of your mama.
That's right. Ever since I can remember, Felix has been around.
It seems as though she has a number of support networks. The Major, her friendship with the Countess, not forgetting Monsieur da Silva.
Maman has many friends. I know how she may seem to most, but once you break the hard shell...
There is a further shell waiting to be broken.
Ha!
Oh, very good, Detective.
Forgive me, mademoiselle. I only jest.
It's quite all right. You are not the only one that feels a razor tongue. She's grateful you are here, especially now, whether she shows it or not.
I am still yet to see this version of Madame that Mademoiselle Angeline speaks of. I'm not sure I will get my hopes up for a budding friendship.
They have often come to blows when it concerns Maman. They are both trying to protect her, but they themselves cannot seem to get along.
She spoke of his desire to join the, how do you describe it? Social elite.
This isn't the first time she has vocalized that concern. She thinks the Major was just using our family name to make his way to the top.
And you do not agree?
I will not deny he has shown interest in Maman's social circles, but they have been friends since even before I was born. Surely all those years of friendship was not just to raise his social standing.
Mademoiselle Angeline obviously does not believe what the Comtesse has to say about the Major. Perhaps it is a jealousy that drives her scandalous theories? If I may be so bold, did the Major contribute to the house?
How do you mean, detective?
Financially.
I imagine a house of this size is rather costly, keeping it in the immaculate condition it is in.
Maman looks after the financial side of the house, but I think she has had to ask him more than once for a contribution of sorts. It is not for me to get involved.
I shall not keep you any longer. Merci, mademoiselle.
I have everything that is needed to push Maman Van de Bosch on her secret. Let us make sure that we have all the connections we need. We do. And now we go to battle a dragon. Whether she likes it or not. Investigate the room. Because you never know if we'll ever be allowed in here again. Drawer, locked. Obviously. Perfume bottles.
Oh,
Look rather expensive. It'd be wise to be very careful with them. Nothing. Fireplace.
aha.
When he was lost in thought, Hercule Poirot was known to stare into fireplaces, watching the dancing flames while his mind worked.
Detective Poirot, what do you think you are doing in here?
I have something I wish to discuss with you.
Well, I hope it is important enough to justify barging into one's bedroom.
I assure you it is.
Good, because this has gone on far too long. We are snowed in this house while a murderer runs amok.
I can understand your frustrations, but it is not as simple as...
You were once an incompetent officer, and now it seems you are just...
This
as
is the point when
incompetent
he
as a
needs to
detective.
just snap at her.
If I was not being lied to and misled at every turn, perhaps the murderer would already be in custody.
I hope you are not suggesting I had something to do with Felix's murder.
I am suggesting that if I had the support that everyone claims they are offering, we would be in a very different situation.
If you have something you want to ask, I suggest you ask me now. We met before Angeline was born, so he was often at the house when she was growing up.
The fact that she's just answering is astounding.
And where was it you two met?
I was attending an event. Felix was also in attendance as a serving officer. A conversation was struck.
So it was not through the Viscount that you two met?
I did not require my husband to start conversations on my behalf.
It was you that instigated it then?
My, detective. That active imagination of yours has taken you on quite some journey.
Madame is attempting to deflect from a subject she obviously does not feel comfortable discussing.
Edwin spent much of his time away on business before Angeline was born. Felix was a welcome distraction from the loneliness of the house.
You were alone in the house.
The staff continued their duties, of course, but trying to get any sort of sophisticated or cultured conversation from them was like drawing blood from a stone.
And when Angeline was born?
Edwin remained at home. It was his duty as a father.
And the Major?
He had his own business and life to tend to, but we remained in touch via letter. Around the time of Edwin's passing, Felix had relocated to the area.
Madame is incredibly coy and brief with the information she offers, but with the Viscount's death coinciding with the Major's return, surely a mere coincidence is too far-fetched.
I'm sure he has hundreds of letters in there. Most of them could and should have been thrown away a long time ago. You are going to have to be more specific.
I refer to the letter addressed to you. the one of a romantic nature.
Romantic nature? Oh, please, Detective. Felix did not have a romantic bone in his body.
He made his intentions quite clear in the letter. I must admit I myself was surprised.
You really do have quite the active imagination, Detective. If that is how you wish to interpret it, so be it. But I can assure you, the Major did not think of me that way, and certainly did not include it in a letter.
I think that is all for now. Merci, madame.
Haha. We now have 2. Where's our new information? 10th birthday.
I cannot see the logic in this. This will not get me any closer.
Aha. Well,
I must act on thought.
how are those not related?
Some would say a lucky guess. I would say a moment of genius.
It is obvious the Major cared for Cassandra. That is no surprise to anyone. There is still one connection.
Is there something I am not? I must take a different approach.
I did that one already, didn't I?
Order and method. That is.
Hope that one to make this.
Things are beginning to become clearer.
With Viscount gone, the Major stepped up and acted as a fatherly figure toward her Angeline. That's all. Which means I need to poke Cassandra again for more information.
Is this really
If you are correct and the Major had no romantic feelings toward you, why would he keep a photograph of you and Mademoiselle Angeline hidden?
He may have stayed in my home, but Felix was a grown man, Detective. What he kept, hidden or otherwise, has nothing to do with me.
Except when it's a picture of you, it has everything to do with you.
But it does not surprise you that he had such a photograph?
We have been friends, and he has been there for Angeline for many years, but you find it strange that he keeps a reminder of us? Perhaps that says more about you, Detective.
What I do find strange is that if he did hold a flame for you, why he would never express it.
If he did, it was not reciprocated. I have not even considered another since my husband's passing. Not that it is any of your business.
I think that is all for now. Merci, madame.
And now we go back to connections. Another one. Where is the information? Cassandra held no romantic feelings towards the Major.
Come, my little grey cells.
Nope.
I must act on thought.
But she kept him around.
Order and method.
That was my next one.
I should not be surprised by my...
As much as she tries to deny it, Cassandra shared the Major's feelings in some capacity. And now we poke her again.
Is this real? Who I allow in my house is none of your business. I do not have to explain anything to you.
I did not think you were one for charity.
I would not expect you to think much of anything. There is no need to talk on it any further, but I'm sure you will remember that, financially speaking, we have had our issues.
I have all the evidence I need to confront Madame van den Bosch. It is my approach to the questions that I must consider. She will no doubt be defensive when pushed, but that may be the only way. She will not give up any information she does not want too easily. Forceful or suggestive? That would anger. Either of these is going to anger her, probably.
He was a man that required no protection, Detective, especially from me.
That is the impression I had of him, which is why your defensive stance warrants questioning.
Your insistent questioning on such trivial matters are getting on my last nerve. There is a murderer and a blackmailer to be found. That is your job here.
Judging from the Major's words in the letter, it was not the only one he had sent declaring his love.
How many
N'est-ce
times do I have to tell you? There was no romantic feelings between us. I have grown weary of this conversation, Poirot.
Madame, you continue to withhold the truth.
And you continue to get on my last nerve. I am not obliged to tell you every detail of my private life.
But when it impedes my investigation...
If only you were this focused on finding the blackmailer and...
Madame.
Very well. I did not lie about how we met. I was attending an event, raising money for... Oh, I cannot recall now.
Such is the importance of it.
It had been some time since I had returned home, and was rather missing English soil. I was aware of Felix's invitation, or at least that there was to be several British officers attending the party, and that is where our friendship began.
Friendship.
He was a warm reminder of home, and I enjoyed conversing with him. We shared walks in the park and read together. As I said, he was a welcome distraction from the days spent alone. I shall go no further with the details, but I will say, I had no intention on being unfaithful to my husband. It was never our plan to go that far. Once I found out I was pregnant, I knew it had to stop.
The Viscount never questioned Mademoiselle's birth?
In his mind, he had no reason to, and he shouldn't have had to. It was my mistake to bear. If he knew the truth, our lives would have been ruined. I told Felix that he was to stay away, but he had no intention to. He became an uncle figure to Angeline, and they grew closer after Edwin's death. I could not tell her the truth. Too much time had passed. The secret remained only between him and I. Until now.
And what were the Major's thoughts on revealing the truth?
He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted her to know exactly who he was. But I told him no. It would not have been the poignant reconciliation that he expected. She would not understand. It must be. But I have told no one.
And the Major?
Felix promised me he wouldn't tell a soul, and I believed him. What, even if he wanted to?
If the Major had let it slip even once throughout the years, perhaps in an intoxicated state, it is a secret that many would seek an opportunity to gain from.
You did not think anyone knew, and that is why you disregarded the letter.
If you bow to these criminals, they will only try to claw more from you.
Which, while harsh, is true, unfortunately.
I tried to retrieve them from the safe after everyone had retired last night. But when I opened the safe, they were nowhere to be found. I assumed he must have hidden them somewhere else.
When I entered the study this morning, they were as visible as a red notice on a police station wall.
I would appreciate if you did not compare them to the face of a wanted felon.
Pardon, madame.
But that does mean someone else in the house has seen them. I don't understand. Why would they return them?
A mystery that is still yet to be solved.
Madame was beaten to the safe by another. It seems we also have a thief within the walls to add to the list of criminals. But a thief that returns their spoils.
I think that is all for now. Merci, madame.
The uncertain connection between the Major and the ransom has been resolved. The Major was being blackmailed. The letters were not by his hand. What remains on the road is why the Major was being blackmailed. We've read this. I now have a blackmail. Yeah. Jim was already revealed enough new insight. Okay, that was weird. I had my suspicions that Madame Van den Bosch and the Major shared a romantic relationship, but I did not expect the revelation of his connection to Madame Angeline. I am now one of the very few that hold Madame's secret. What is next? Complete. We have new points to look at. And yep, we just need to leave, and I'm sure something will present itself. Because of course, Archibald is there.
Detective Poirot, how is your investigation coming?
Monsieur Starling, I must admit, I have learned much more than I was expecting to.
You'll be wrapping the case up soon, then?
One has never finished learning, monsieur, and in this case, I shall need to continue if I am to find the Major's killer.
It might help to vocalize your thinking. I'm all ears.
Mr. Sterling offers an interesting concept. If I was to state the current position of my investigation while holding back certain truths, the guilty parties may realize I am hot on their heels and reveal their hand.
Monsieur, would you gather the guests and staff in the salon?
Right away, Detective. Can I ask for what reason?
I shall reveal all once everyone is together.
And this is why Poirot is notorious for being the one who does this, where he brings everyone together to a central point and reveals everything, reveals every secret about every single person until one of them breaks and reveals that they are
what is the meaning of all
the
this?
guilty party.
Madame, I ask that you all lend me your ears for only a few moments. What I have to say is of great significance to everyone. You are all invited here to celebrate the engagement of Mademoiselle Angeline Van den Bosch and Monsieur Gédéon Demire, the coming together of two prevalent families. But the celebrations were short-lived, as Major Felix Hagen was found dead in his study by a young servant of the house. It then became my responsibility and obligation as a detective to uncover the truth behind his demise. My initial examination of his study exposed a number of things I did not expect to find. Things I have no desire to divulge at this time, but what I can say is this. It was no simple murder. A letter demanding ransom for a continued silence confirmed this. I am sure some, if not all of you, have heard whispers of a series of blackmails that have plagued the social elite in recent weeks. After hearing of the letters in the Major study, you may ask if it was him behind the letters. You may further ask if he was preparing his next threat to another unsuspecting victim. It is a question that crossed even my mind. That was until I sought the truth. That in fact it was the Major that had fallen victim to our blackmailer Mystérieux. Last night I spoke with you all, confirmed your whereabouts in the house over the course of the evening, and while I would have expected such questioning to reveal a potential suspect, what I learned was that it could not have been one of you.
What do you mean, not one of us? The man was stabbed. He hardly did that to himself. There is still a killer in the house.
Pardon, monsieur, if you would allow me to finish. It could not have been only one of you. Rather a partnership, in cahoots, if you will. Conversations today have revealed facts that I was not expecting to discover. And although they may have muddied and complicated my investigation, what I must do to bring the guilty parties to justice has become clearer. Those of you that spun stories in an attempt to confuse and derail my investigation have made a grave mistake in underestimating my intelligence. Other detectives may fall for such deception, but I can assure you, Detective Poirot is no such fool. My investigation is far from over, and swift justice shall be dealt to those that have committed such appalling acts and have continued to mislead and lie to protect themselves. Now, I must continue mon enquête, and I shall leave you to consider that you may be beside a cold-hearted killer. Bonsoir. Monsieur Sterling, un moment.
Quite the speech, detective.
Merci, but it was not made to entertain, more to warn the guilty parties that I am hot on their heels, no matter how clever they believe themselves to be.
Well, if there is anything I can do.
When you returned to the study last night, did you notice anything different from our previous visit?
Nothing. But I was so preoccupied with the Major. Sorry, detective. Should I have?
Not necessarily.
Perhaps it was just my mind playing games again.
Maybe one of the guests got lost and wandered in.
If a guest had taken a wrong turn, finding themselves in the Major's bedroom first, I am sure they would not have proceeded through the next door unless they were not lost at all.
Master Hagen had a key, obviously, and Lady Vandenbosch.
Monsieur Demire was quite sure Archibald also had a copy of the key, which is not something one would easily forget.
When requested, aye. If something is required from there when Master Hagen is not around.
Forgive me. If he is not around, how is it you access this safe?
It's not what you think, detective.
What I think is that you have been trusted with a copy of the key, and you have lied to me about it.
I only lied because of the trouble I can get into with Lady Vandenbosch.
At this moment, monsieur, you should be more worried about the trouble you shall find yourself in with the law.
I know how it will sound, but I lost my key. I must have set it down somewhere, and it has been tidied away. Master Hagen asked so rarely for me to go in the safe, I didn't think it would be missed.
Mr. Sterling of his lost key strikes me as rather coincidental. The Major's safe is broken into, with documents ransacked, and letters involving Madame Vandenbosch's secret left out. It is a crime with no apparent purpose.
I should have said this morning. I'm sorry.
Monsieur, I am not quite sure you understand the severity of what has happened.
I am well aware, Detective. I just thought she would be able to help.
Would you allow a man with a smoking gun to remove his bullet from a victim's chest?
I suppose not.
I understand that Monsieur Sterling was only trying to help, but surely he must have seen what it could do to the integrity of my investigation.
Is that really necessary?
The murderer remains at large, and there is still no sign of the weapon. I would say that makes them essential.
Of course. I still just cannot imagine any of them being guilty of his murder.
It may be hard to imagine, but it is the truth. I would like to begin my searches now. Since it is closest, I will start with the west wing.
I may not be back when you return. Here is the key to the other rooms.
One
Please
key
return
for
it
all
when
of the
you're back.
rooms.
Merci. I shall guard it with my life.
First, let us pay the Comtesse a visit. New mind map. Before I can accuse anyone of any crime, I must be sure if they were working alone or with another. This is the perfect opportunity to find evidence of any collusion and look for the murder weapon. Should make myself known before entering.
Entrez.
It would be rude to not address her before searching the room.
Detective, what a pleasure.
I just can't get
I
over
didn't
those bright
expect
red
to
shoes
see
and
you in my
socks. Those are
chambers.
amazing.
In a purely professional capacity, I can assure you.
There is no need to act so stiff, Detective.
Madame, after the revelation of your actions last night, I'm afraid my sense of humor is all but gone.
I will not apologize again for merely trying to help. Shall we get straight to it then? Let us not waste your time any further, Detective. That would be Inga. She has been one of the most promising young women that has come from the shelter.
Ah.
Madame Vandenbosch took in a young lady from your shelter.
There is no need to sound so surprised, Detective. She does have a heart.
I did not mean to sound so cruel. I just did not expect Madame to hire someone of that background after the incident with her previous maid, Florette.
People change, Detective. You should not judge someone on their past actions.
Believe me, Countess, I know that only too well.
I commend you on your dedication with the women you help. It is most
Be
honorable.
careful, Detective. That almost sounded like a compliment.
It is your actions in this house that have been questionable, Madame. Your work outside is something that many more could take note of.
We do what we can.
Have you been able to find many of the girls from the shelter work?
We wouldn't be doing a very good job if I could only help one girl. I in fact found work for one of them as a maid in Monsieur da Silva's house recently.
Ah.
She has fitted into Monsieur's home well.
What is better, Detective? That she remained in an abusive house, or she is able to rebuild her life with an honest wage in a prosperous house?
When put like that, is she happy in her position?
The happiest she has been in years. I check in with them all as often as possible. And if there was a problem, I would know.
I'm glad to hear that more girls are building a better future for themselves. And it is with the help from the Comtesse that it has been able to happen.
Merci, Madame.
And now we will search the room. Piano.
Ah,
Fireplace and clock. Let's get rid of the ones that we know are not going to actually do anything.
oh.
First aid kit, presumably the one she used. A package. Looks like a hat box.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, book.
Ah.
And a gramophone. Nothing. Although it is her varied connections that disturb me. Oh, I cannot leave. I have not found everything yet. I must search again more carefully. Huh. Oh, I must speak to her again.
Go ahead, detective. A compliment and now an apology. Well, detective, you certainly have changed your tune.
There was something I was still unsure of. You mentioned that your training was some years ago.
From my days as a nurse, oui.
If that is so, why would you have brought several pieces of equipment usually found in a physician's bag?
One must always be prepared, detective.
Prepared? At an engagement celebration?
If I had not brought them, I would not have been able to assist you last night. Perhaps you should be thankful for my precaution and not so suspicious.
And had she not brought them at all, I would not have to ask such a question.
Merci, madame.
To next guest room. Oh, so it's just going to jump you to the next one in order. The ever-guarded Jacqueline Conrad, a mannequin. It is time I should question her on her conversation with the Major before searching her room.
Detective, what can I do for you?
Mademoiselle, I am sure you understand my reasoning for such intrusion.
If it's going to clear my name, be my guest.
If you wouldn't mind answering some questions, it can hopefully be cleared faster.
Like I said, he's not the man he wants everyone to think he is.
Oui, but how is it you came to that conclusion?
You don't really want me to recount every conversation I've had with him, do you?
There is one particular I had in mind.
Tell me about
An
your
argument would imply it was a two-way conversation.
Ha!
And that is not how it was?
Here it is. I've been helping Angeline get exposure, her marriage to Gideon is big news, and his work is really paving the way for others. I saw the chance to get their names out there, and he didn't like it.
What was there not to like?
Your guess is as good as mine, detective. But if I had to, I'd say he was jealous it wasn't his name at the top of the article.
And his reason to storm off?
Oh, you know about that. Let's just say I didn't accept his pathetic attempt to get me to stop the story. If you're gonna try and pay someone off, at least make it worth their while.
The remaining 1,000 francs. I thought the Major would only be supportive of Mademoiselle Angeline. There must be more to why he would not want her success to be known.
You've really got a fascination with that guy, huh?
I would not say fascination. An interest, perhaps.
Well, I'll save you the bother of trying to find out more about him. He's not that interesting. In fact, he's a bit of a wimp if you ask me.
That is not the impression I got of him.
That's because you've only seen the side of him he wants you to. He knows what to say in front of the right people. But behind closed doors, he's clueless. Let me
Clueless
guess.
in what way?
The first thing he told you was that he was a union leader. No, the voice of the people.
A man that is proud of his work is not something to be sneered at.
A man that repeats sound bites, however, is.
Don't get me wrong, he has a way with words, and he can certainly rally a crowd. But that's about it. At the end of the day, he's a representative and nothing more. He's got to play the part, not just learn the lines.
Mademoiselle does not think particularly highly of Monsieur Bequez. She is a strong, independent woman, but to use the term wimp is an unnecessary attack on his character. And that sums up the European perception of the Americans.
Merci, mademoiselle. I shall leave you to relax.
Sure thing, Detective. And if you change your mind on that exclusive about that shooting...
If I do change it, you shall be the first to know.
And now we can search the room. Another gramophone player. Newspaper. Newspaper.
Ah,
Peaceful strikes turn to loss of lives as violence breaks out on the front line. Following the tragic events in a city that has darkened the spirits of people and brought to a screeching halt the rising defiance of the working class, the area has been cordoned off and police presence at the scene has increased. Factory security forces have been asked to step down, and the powers handed over to law enforcement services. I see. Workers laid down their tools, switched off all machinery, and stood together shoulder to shoulder as the fight for fair pay and condition raged on. What started as peaceful protests by those employed by the factories has turned into a battle of class, with support for the workers coming in from all over the city. Although reports have not been confirmed, sources state that violence broke out following a second wave surge of supporters. Official numbers have not been published, but it is believed that as many as 8 workers have lost their lives in the fighting. The workers' front line has been considered as a representation of the people and working class of Belgium that now refuse to work in such demanding conditions for such a demeaning and insufficient wage. Chief Commissioner Leroux has confirmed that the outbreak of violence and resulting civilian deaths are being investigated, and an official statement is to be made in the coming days. Jacqueline Conrad. Nothing in the cupboards. A pocket knife.
Huh.
I presume this belongs to Jackie. Chasing a good story may lead her to some precarious scenarios. Yet another fireplace.
Huh.
Cluttered workstation. Jackie has set up a makeshift office in her room. She must bring her work with her everywhere. Mr. Antique spotted leaving the Velvet Tickle Friday at 23:15. Cambrai House has been poaching off neighboring land, boar, deer, and duck. Maggie to follow up. Miss Bonte has found her husband in their marital bed with a young maidservant. Testament from maid needed. Mr. Denault overheard at the Cackling Crow speaking poorly of King Leopold. He said questionable ideas. We say doubtful, skeptical, shady. Notes from Francis up by Monday. Window.
Aha.
Nothing. I can't leave, meaning that I need to speak with her once more? Yep.
Go right ahead, Detective.
I was surprised to learn Monsieur de Silva and the Major worked
All
together.
Felix cared about was money and filling his pockets with it. That's why he got into bed with De Silva.
Figuratively.
The Major was not in need of money, though.
Need and want are two very different things. Did he need to move here and leech off the Madame? No, but he wanted to.
Tell me your opinion of their work together.
As far as I know, De Silva hired him to work security. He was worried what could happen to his precious factories if things got ugly.
And your reporters were there to cover the story when it did turn that way.
My reporters go where there is news to be told.
And you predicted the violence that occurred?
Anyone could see that was gonna happen. If you ask me, Hugo should have acted sooner.
Merci, mademoiselle. I shall leave you to relax.
Any new connections? Not yet. To the next guest room. Obviously, the game will not let me depart until I have everything from each room. Here we are in Mademoiselle Angeline and Gideon's room. I wonder what we shall find. Ah, his and her boots. Cute. Open drawers. There doesn't seem to be anything of interest. Yet another piano. A photograph.
Oh.
Seems they used to be closer. Perhaps the recent behavior is merely a facade. Could it be possible that Gideon collaborated with Zechariah? Fireplace.
Huh.
I know there's going to be an achievement if you look at every single fireplace. And I suspect one for every clock as well.
Oh.
Gideon's room is pristine.
Ah.
I could have mistaken it for my own. Second floor hall. With all the west guest rooms searched, I should make my way to the guest rooms on the east of the first floor. There must be evidence of collusion somewhere. Ah.
Mademoiselle, we meet again.
Bonjour, Monsieur Poirot. Pardon, Détective Poirot.
Just a detective is quite all right.
Bon, can I help you with something?
It was you that alerted the house to the Major's body, was
I
it
was
not?
taking him a plate of food, but he didn't answer to my knocking.
You then entered the study.
I did. He wasn't moving. He just lay there.
I did not mean to upset you again. Seeing him there would be troubling for anyone, and I'm sure it is not a memory you wish to relive.
Tell me of your relationship with the other
I
staff.
suppose we're like a family. We argue, but most of the time we get along.
You must all be quite close then.
Some more than others.
Oh?
You refer to whom, mademoiselle?
Well, Maman sorry, Rihanna, she's been here the longest, and she's very close with Lizzie on account of Luke.
That makes sense. How is Mademoiselle Elizabeth Faith late fiancé connects?
Maman is Luke's sister. You did not know that? She would
Ah.
have said. She talks about him all the time. It must have been awful, losing him in those riots.
Oh. That's an important piece of information.
Apparently, he was right at the front when they were charged. They didn't stand a chance. If I had been the one responsible for his death, I wouldn't want Maman Ray looking for me.
Mademoiselle Rihanna, Maman Ray, she has expressed her desire for revenge.
I'm now seeing pieces of a puzzle falling together.
Every time she talks about what happened.
How is it that the knowledge of Luke's death has eluded... Ha! That's an eluded. It should be eluded me for so long. The death of her brother is certainly motive enough. I did not see an aggressive side to Mademoiselle Rihanna when we spoke, but I wonder if she would act on such impulses for revenge if the opportunity arose. If you do not mind me inquiring, what brought you to the women's shelter?
I guess you wouldn't know anything about life on the streets.
It is not an experience I have had to face personally, but I understand that many are forced into it, and the lifestyle that comes with it.
The lifestyle of a thief, you mean?
Put rather bluntly, oui.
You are the first officer that has not taken one look at me and pulled out their handcuffs.
Mademoiselle, I can see you have turned your life around, and I commend you on your efforts.
Without the Countess, I would probably be rotting in a cell somewhere.
There is an obvious alliance to the Comtesse, and an understandable one at that.
Merci, mademoiselle.
However, Igni may seem nothing more than a young, innocent maid, but there is something she is withholding. If I am to solve the cases before me, I must learn what it is. We have no connections for it, though. Did we get anything new elsewhere? No. To Zachariah's bedroom. I wonder if Monsieur Zachariah is as seemingly innocent as his brother. I should speak with him before searching the room. So once again, speak to, search room, speak to.
Monsieur Demir, I hope you are feeling better today.
Nothing a good night's sleep couldn't fix.
Très bien. I wonder if you would be up to discussing certain matters with me.
Whatever you need.
He's got rings around his eyes. I'm sorry if dealing with the Mage's body brought up any familiar emotions.
I lost my taste for death a long time ago, but it had to be done. I'm certainly in no rush to be carrying a dead body again, though.
Most understandable. I shall extend the same gratitude to you as I did to your brother.
You've spoken to him already. How is he?
Perhaps that should be a question you ask him yourself.
Yeah, maybe.
I spoke with your brother about your past.
I bet he had a lot to say. He always did have an opinion on the war.
When I say your past, I refer to your past as brothers.
Okay, well, what did he say?
It seems you both had the same sentiment for this party. Perhaps the bridges that you thought were once burnt are in fact primed to be reconstructed.
We'll see how probable that reconstruction is going to be. Until he sees my point of view, I don't know how we can move forward.
What is there for him to understand before the bond can be repaired?
He lost his friends in the war, the same as everyone. But somehow he has forgiven. I'm sorry, Detective, I can't. And Gideon just doesn't understand that.
After speaking with Monsieur Gideon about his brother's state of mind, I think the best thing for them both would be a reconciliation. There is something about Monsieur Zachariah's story that he is leaving out, though. The death of his friends and comrades weighs heavily on him.
Those two, close.
They must share something in common to be able to hold a conversation for the time they did.
If there is one thing I know about my brother, it's that he will not. No. He cannot be rude. He just doesn't have it in him.
Was it not your brother that punched Monsieur Hagen?
Ah, that's different. He was asking for it. If you put my brother in a room with 5 socialites like her, he would work his way around every single one of them, offering his full attention and finest manners.
Merci for your assistance, monsieur.
Now we can search the room. Cigarette butts.
Ah.
Certainly a room that has been lived in, then. Fireplace for achievement.
Huh.
Ceremonial dagger.
Oh.
That's the conversation item. The gramophone. The window.
Hmm.
And the plant.
Huh.
And nothing else. So ask him about the dagger. Or more accurately, his time
Always
in the
got
war.
time for my... The dagger. I wondered how long it would take for that to become an issue.
I shall give you the opportunity to explain the reason for it being here before I jump to any conclusions.
It was going to be a wedding gift for Gideon. I've maybe not been the best brother in recent years. I thought this could make up for some of it. After what happened to the Major, I thought it was a bit tasteless.
You did not see it fitting to tell me you were harboring a rather sizable knife in your room?
I wouldn't say harboring. And I wasn't expecting to be a suspect in a murder.
Merci for your assistance, monsieur.
Any new connections from here? Ah, there is one. Let's see.
I cannot see the logic in this. Perhaps a second...
No.
Is there something I am not seeing?
Nope.
This will not get me any
And now it's gonna Yeah.
Another success.
This is
I
why you never doubt.
doubted myself.
Yes, never doubted itself at all. That's why I skipped over it. They would not have worked together. So that eliminates the brothers for now. The next guest room. Although I'm beginning to suspect it might be servants. Monsieur Becca's room. Without him here, I am free to search it. Clock. Book.
Aha.
A hasty scribble regarding a meeting with whom I assume Ernesto. Curious. A note next to the fireplace that is missed.
Oh.
It seems he has been attempting to write a speech of some kind unsuccessfully, though. I wonder, does this fit a pattern of behavior with Hugo? You underestimate the power of man's defiance. Scratched out. Your men, you are in a position to bring all of this to an end. All we ask is what we deserve. If you do not retract your men, they will be met with equal force, too forceful. Your weapons may beat our bodies, but they will not bruise our hearts, spirits. These are the men that have built our great nation, country, and will continue to. Money will not save your soul. Interesting. plant. Photograph. With so many siblings, it must have been difficult for Hugo to get attention. Oh my. I'm able to go to the next guest room, meaning I have found everything. There is a new connection, though.
What a revelation!
Jackie's opinion, she doesn't value Hugo particularly high. Would he collaborate with anyone else, I wonder? Oh, wait. There's another. Interesting. Not sure where it would connect. What it would connect to, though.
Come, my little grey cell.
I don't think so.
I must take a different approach if... Come, my little grey cell. I should not be surprised by my own...
Hugo and Anissa confirmed each other's alibis. It's possible they may have colluded together. Can I find anything to support this? Ah, okay. Which is all well and good, since the next guest room is, I assume, Mrs. De Silva's. Perhaps. Yep, Monsieur De Silva. Hat.
Monsieur de Silva, I am sure you understand the necessity for this type of search.
Not really, Detective. Your speech was rather spirited, but it did not give me much faith in your investigation.
I have not had my abilities questioned to my face by one of those I suspect of a crime before.
Well, if you wish to prove me wrong, you should hurry up and find Felix's killer.
First name basis.
And I hope, with your help, monsieur, I shall.
Madame van der Bosch spoke of your work with her late husband.
Yes, I helped him invest some money. Unfortunately, he was not the businessman he thought he was.
Madame van den Bosch had a very similar view. At least he could have taken solace that you were both in the same position.
I think you're confused, Detective. It was Edwin that lost his fortune, not I.
Forgive my naivete. If you were helping him make viable investments, would you not have seen the same opportunity for yourself?
I told him about the opportunities. I did not tell him to put his whole family's wealth into it. The prospect of doing good meant more to him than his profit margins. He was bound to fail.
The business declared bankruptcy.
It did, until it was purchased for a fraction of its worth and made the new owner a small fortune.
I am beginning to see Monsieur de Silva's more ruthless side. It sounds as though the Viscount was trying to at least make a positive change, or perhaps he was missing Monsieur de Silva's cutthroat edge.
Everything that I want to say on that matter has already been said.
I understand, monsieur. But what I would like to know is, was the late Viscount aware of your feelings towards his wife?
Excuse me, Detective, but you have crossed the line.
Cross the line like an attempt to bankrupt a business partner and friend so that you'll be able to swoop in and impress a certain target of your affections.
You make such ridiculous accusations without a shred of proof.
Your reaction at the mere suggestion is proof enough, monsieur. While I cannot arrest you for betrayal of a friend, I can hope your conscience does not forget, and that will be punishment enough.
Monsieur de Silva's actions are not a criminal offense, but if there was a penalty for deception and deceit, he would surely receive a life sentence. If he has gone to such lengths before, what would stop him from committing a similar act again, this time to the Major?
He didn't have much to speak of. I was always surprised at the life he lived.
Surprised in what way?
Well, considering it wasn't that long ago he came to me asking about work, I didn't think he was in such good financial shape.
You offered him a position.
Nothing that he was willing to lower himself to. That's when he began talking about what else he could do for me.
The Major works security for your factories.
You can call what him and his team did security. For the money I paid, I did not expect them to be so reckless.
It was a considerable amount you paid him?
There's no need to divulge amounts, but it was certainly more than was expected.
To repay the loan that he pulled out in order to pay the blackmail. One would expect a business of Monsieur de Silva's caliber to have agreed a price for the Major's services. Why would he allow the Major to barter more?
He said they were all professionals, but I saw nothing of the sort. He said he had worked with them all in the army as their superior officer. They were men that could be trusted.
But that was not the case?
I had not even met them before they arrived on site. They brought their own equipment. They looked like they knew what they were doing.
And this equipment, it included the weapons that injured and killed the workers?
It was not much of a choice, Detective. I said they didn't need them, but Felix said it was essential. He said he knew better.
The more Monsieur talks, the shadier his dealings with the Majors become. It is beginning to sound as though the riots were no accident.
That is all for now.
Letter. A letter stating the blackmailer would reveal information of his questionable business dealings. Monsieur de Silva, at first you may question the nature of this letter, but by its conclusion you will know that what you have fought so hard to keep hidden could be far from it. You have spent years feeding off the hard-working backs of others and offering nothing in return. Your workers continue to take their lives into their own hands day after day with your shoddy, damaged, and dangerous machines for a fraction of what they deserve. Deal after deal is made, and while your pockets become fatter, lining them with more of your blood money, it is your workers that must pay the price. The mistreatment and pain that you have caused does not only reside in the factories that you own, but the house that you live in. You do not value the lives of those that allow you to live the opulent life that you do, and I will not allow that to continue. I can no longer sit back and watch as you disregard any sense of integrity or morality and continue to remain on your self-made pedestal, lording over those that deserve so much more. It is time you paid the price for your crimes, and the cost is 5,000 francs. It is a small price to pay for my silence, for if I do not receive it before Friday, it will not be cash you are paying, but rather years behind bars. Bring the money in a small brown paper parcel, addressed to Monsieur Cordier, to the post office on Rue des Entrepôts. Give it to the cashier and leave. If you do as requested, you will not hear from me again, and you may continue your life of luxury. It is obvious you do not value others' lives, but I urge you to consider what yours is worth. Another blackmail letter. Letter. A contract for partnership between Ernesto and Hugo. It's missing Hugo's signature. 12.1. This agreement is governed by the laws of the Kingdom of Belgium. Both parties agree to the following. 1. Current workers' strike shall cease in all manners and forms. 2. Factory floor, machine operators, and supervisors shall return to their positions immediately. 3. Terms of the above contract shall be implemented and relevant action taken directly. Signed, M. Ernesto de Silva, factory owner and employer. Ernesto de Silva. Signature. M. Hugo Beckers, union leader. No signature. So he was giving in to their demands. And gramophone. Nothing on the bed. Speak to De Silva again.
What is it now?
I have spoken of a potential blackmail ring, and yet you still kept your letter to yourself.
It is none of your business. And it is nothing more than a cheap trick to have me admit something that is not true.
If that were the case, it would be strange for you to have kept the letter and brought it with you, would it not?
Your persistence is a trait I do not enjoy.
Monsieur de Silva has remained blunt, if not curt, with his responses to my questions. Perhaps it would be best to act in a courteous and empathetic manner so that he may be more forthcoming with the truth of his blackmail letter and its contents. Courteous and empathetic.
No reason, detective. Merely saving you from wasting your time.
I will be the judge of that. I would like to know about any and all evidence that may help my investigation. I trust there is nothing else you deem a waste of my time.
Of course not, officer.
Detective.
It's not as though you think I'm harboring some illicit secret. The letter was a pathetic attempt to intimidate me. Nothing more. I have never heard so much rubbish in all my life. I value those that work hard and deserve it.
That suggests there are some that you do not respect.
Yes, well, why should I praise someone for doing a poor job? You make me sound like some monster.
Monsieur, the letter does not only discuss your questionable business dealings, but also cases of abuse against your staff, both accusations that must be taken very seriously.
Detective, there is a difference between telling a member of my staff what to do and abuse.
And it is you that decides where that line is drawn?
In my house? Yes, it is.
Monsieur does not like being pressed on the subject of how he treats the staff. If he has nothing to hide, there should be no need for such a reaction.
Yes, and no one asked him to.
But surely it is beneficial to both parties. Your profits must have been affected.
There are barely any profits to speak of.
Why have those talks not taken place and the deal arranged?
Monsieur Beckers has made no attempt to speak with me and offered no counter-offer.
What up, Random?
The ball is in his court, detective.
Although it is Monsieur de Silva's wages and treatment of his staff that is in question, it sounds as though he is at least trying to resolve the issue, surprisingly unlike Monsieur Beckers. Do you have any ideas as to which staff member may have expressed their abuse?
Please
Indeed.
stop calling it that.
Most happy
I
Saturday.
treat all my servants exactly how I always have, and no one has complained before.
That does not mean your behavior is appropriate.
They have one chance. If they are not doing the job they are hired to do, they are gone. You would be surprised how many staff expect an easy ride.
I did not expect Monsieur to treat his staff the same as his friends, but I also did not expect him to treat them as like stray dogs.
Is there a specific member of staff that may have expected such a ride?
There is one girl, a new maid. I didn't expect great things from her, but Comtesse de Vos promised me she could do what was required.
As I suspected. This must be the young girl that the Comtesse spoke of. Perhaps the positions she's finding for these girls are not the best fit.
That is all for now.
I still cannot leave. There is a new connection.
I must take a different approach if I am to... Is there something...
Nope. It has to be something that connects to Ernesto.
This will not get me any close.
Why do I get the feeling? Oh, right.
What a revelation!
I had forgotten about that. I'm doubtful this duo would collaborate. Would Ernesto deal with another member of the house? Perhaps someone who never confirmed his alibi?
Some would say a lucky guess. I would say a moment of genius.
Ernesto doesn't strike me as the sort of man that would ask for help no matter how important. And I will speak to Ernesto de Silva once more.
What?
Did you speak with the Comtesse directly about hiring a servant from the shelter?
She approached me. I thought it was rather brash.
In what way?
Assuming that I would want to take on another servant, and one from such a troubled background. She is running the charity, not I.
Monsieur, there is something you are keeping from me. Your business relationship with the Major is obviously towing the line of legality.
When he came to me, I told him that with the factories on strike and my profits pouring down the drain, I had nothing for him. But he said he could help me get them all back to work and the factories earning. His rates were steep, but he said he knew what needed to be done, and he was prepared to do it. A week passed and they were all still on strike. In fact, even more had joined them. He made excuse after excuse, demanding more and more money for the job to be done. But he never actually told me what he was going to do.
The riots.
I had no idea they were going to charge them like that. How was I meant to know?
And even following such a tragedy, he continued to demand money from you.
He said if he wanted my silence, it would cost. Do you have any idea what it could do to my livelihood, my name? If it got out that I had paid the so-called security that did that.
I have every idea, monsieur. You hired a militia to take action against your own workers. You deserve whatever name is chosen for being so morally bereft in your decision-making.
I didn't know that was what he was going to do. You must believe me.
I have to believe nothing but the truth. And the truth, monsieur, is that it is not only the Major that has the blood of those men on his hands. That is all for now.
New connection? Yes.
I must act on thought and order and method. That... I cannot see the logic in this. Magnifique.
Interesting. Comtesse may know more than she's letting on if she has an inside link with the staff at the house. I have found no clear evidence of the guests working together in any capacity. What has become clear is the Comtesse's connection to the staff. Could there be something more to their relationship? Must speak to... another connection in the blackmail as well.
The pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together.
She's making shelter girls do her dirty work, finding dirt on members of the social elite. So she is the blackmailer, but not necessarily the murderer.